there, and welcome to Labour Media. I hope you've all been enjoying the first couple of videos on the history of Labour, because there's plenty more where that came from. Today, though, we're going to be taking a break from that series and we're going to talk about some economics, specifically the economics of fascism. Despite the threat fascism poses to life itself, it is as misunderstood as just about every major political ideology. Specifically, the economics of fascism are widely subject to misconception, with fascism being viewed as either a purely social reality or as economics are construed as something entirely separate to their reality. I'll go into both the illusory perception of fascist economics and the truth behind them, that fascism is a last-ditch effort by the bourgeoisie to utilise social reaction for the purpose of restarting market forces and expanding imperialism. Let's look at what is assumed by a lot of liberals about the nature of fascism. Now, fascism is inherently incoherent, and the average fascist might think of themselves as having a sort of third position in terms of economics that is neither capitalist nor socialist. Of course, that is completely fantastical, as every existing fascist state has been a capitalist state. Whilst there is this element of incoherency, liberals misidentify where such incoherency arises, bringing us to horseshoe theory, the idea that the far left and the far right have common cause, something that is tangentially related to our discussion here. Liberalism is idealistic, therefore they don't connect fascism to its material functions, but to its aesthetic and to the details of that aesthetic. They see fascism as a kind of general authoritarianism the same way they see communism as authoritarian, and because communism is collectivist, they think fascism too is collectivist, citing the symbol of the fasces, a bundle of sticks, being stronger than one. This is also partially to do with George Orwell's 1984, where the antagonist power is some sort of generic hyper-authoritarianism. The book's popularity among liberals has certainly polarised the idea that fascist economics are close to socialist economics, insofar as the two are cut from the same cloth. However, though Georgie Porgy's 1894 may have popularised this idea, let's look at some more studious sources. Stanley Payne has a great number of works on fascism and how it can be defined. One example from 1983, Fascism, Comparison and Definition, has Payne give a generic definition of fascism summarised in a number of points. 1. Permanent nationalistic one-party authoritarianism, neither temporary nor a prelude to internationalism. 2. The charismatic leadership principle, incorporated by many communist and other regimes as well. 3. The search for a synthetic ethnicist ideology distinct from liberalism and Marxism. 4. An authoritarian state system and political economy of corporatism or syndicalism or partial socialism, more limited and pluralistic than the communist model. 5. The philosophical principle of voluntarist activism, unbounded by any philosophical determinism. Whilst Payne, correctly, argues that fascism is distinct from Marxism, he says that it is a form of partial socialism, whatever that means, in conjunction with corporatism, whatever that means. The only way fascism could be believed to involve partial socialism is if you think socialism is when the government does stuff, in which case every ideology that involves the existence of a state will involve partial socialism. Corporatism is merely capitalism by another name, or in reference to state management of capitalism, something that does not exist in fascism any more than it does in the average liberal democracy. So I've given some dismissal to these ideas, but let's look at the evidence in regard to what fascist economics actually pertain to. Let's look at examples of fascist economics in practice, particularly in regard to Nazi Germany. To quote Germa Bell, it is a fact that the government of the National Socialist Party sold off public ownership in several state-owned firms in the middle of the 1930s. The firms belong to a wide range of sectors: steel, mining, banking, local public utilities, shipyards, ship lines, railways, etc. In addition to this, the delivery of some public services produced by public administrations prior to the 1930s, especially social services and services related to work, was transferred to the private sector, mainly to several organisations within the Nazi Party. The word privatisation, long before the 80s and the advent of neoliberalism, was invented to comment on this mass sale of government assets by the Nazi Party. It should also be known that the Nazi Party banned trade unions, through communist concentration camps, had many members who were formerly in the Freikorps that massacred socialists during the Spartacist uprising, that was greatly funded by the bourgeois to keep the communist KPD out of power, and had many bourgeois members in its upper echelons. Those who had anything close to left-wing economic views in the party were suppressed in the 1926 Bamberg Conference and killed outright in the 1934 Night of the Long Knives, and even those left-wing economic views, quote-unquote, were bargain bin social democracy. Another notable example of this would be Chile's fascist dictator Pinochet. Pinochet's regime was installed in collaboration with the CIA with the explicit purpose of overthrowing the socialist Salvador Allende. He scrapped Allende's economic interventions and began going about experimenting with privatization and scrapping regulation, with Pinochet's Chile becoming a laboratory for neoliberal policy. There is no element of socialism within fascistic economics. Its rise aligns with the needs of the bourgeois to reopen markets and accelerate capitalism. The goals of communism have nothing in common with the goals of fascism. The two are diametrically opposed. Another point would be how fascist philosophy of Malthusianism, of palingenesis, of reaction, mirror capitalism's focus on competition, translating competition between workers to the idea that some races or other groups are genetically superior, that they are in competition with each other. This translates also to fascism's desire to conquer. The fascist plans to colonize the world dreamt up by Mussolini and Hitler derived their inspiration from Manifest Destiny in the US, the genocide of indigenous peoples for the purposes of economic expansion. Lebensraum is an economic policy as well as one born from white supremacy, one that wishes to repartition the earth in accordance with the monopoly capital that controls the fascist state. As rhetorical materialism alleges, the superstructure serves to protect the base. Short one today, but I want to make sure that everyone here knows that fascist economics are central to its evil. Too often we are focused only on the social aspects of fascism. We are thus led to assume that it somehow follows partial socialism in its economics as a shorthand. Fascism is the device of capitalism in decay. It involves restarting markets after a period of economic decline. It puts the blame for said decline on a particular social group and uses propaganda against them to justify colonial expansion and the expansion of private industry. Fascism is, as I've said before, the boot of capital.